Guest on.
And we have our guest on, Melinda. So Melinda, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Sure thing. Glad to be here.
So Melinda, I'm going to introduce you just a little bit. I don't have all the information on you. I've watched an interview with you. I think Neil was interviewing you once before.
Yeah, that was one of the last minute ones, so forgive me for that.
So you're kind of a celebrity now.
I guess
which isn't that nice? So Melinda, I have down here, you're from the Long Beach, California area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. And we want to take the time to thank you for joining us today. I know you're very busy and very successful. I've been reading about some of the things you're doing, personal life and business life. And do you ever sleep?
Yes. I try to anyway, as long as my son agrees.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Melinda, we want to ask you a few questions if you can. I have some written down here, if that's okay. And then just explain, in your best, whatever question to answer, whatever you can. And then we'll open it up to some of the agents to ask as we get a little further down the line, if that's okay. Would that be all right with you?
Sure.
Good. All right, good. So Melinda, tell us a little bit, when did you begin your real estate career and how did you decide to get into real estate?
I initially got into real estate in 2003 because I wanted to buy a house for myself, and I talked to a real estate agent for about 10 minutes, and I really wanted to buy a house, and I didn't care what kind of hood it was in as long as it was a house. And this real estate agent just kept trying to push me to a condo based on my price range. And so I am one of those people that says, okay, well, let's figure out a different solution. And I started looking on what was then the HUD website for foreclosures, but I couldn't make any offers if I didn't have a license. So I said, well, okay, well, I'm going to go get my license so I can figure out how to make an offer on these things. And I knew nothing. And so I just went and called a bunch of different real estate offices, and only 2 called me back. And one of them called me and said, come on in and we can get you signed up for some classes. And I took an online, it wasn't online back then because that really wasn't a huge thing then. And I took a correspondence book course and did that by myself. And then it took me 6 months to do that. By the time I finally finished it, I signed up, took the class, started going into the office to go to classes to learn more stuff. And I started thinking to myself, wow, this is something I think I could actually do for a living, not just to buy my own house. And the rest is history.
So you actually went and got a real estate license because you wanted to buy a house.
Yep. And I thought that I had to pay the buyer's agent, just like a lot of buyers. I tell a lot of buyers that when I first talk to them, because they don't know that. They don't realize that the seller pays for the buyer's agent commission. So I say that right up front to people when they're afraid to talk to me and reveal information. And they go, oh, I didn't realize that. That's great. So I use that experience for my clients. And I remember that experience, that was part of why I decided to go get my license, because I thought that I couldn't afford to pay an agent.
So let me get this straight. If an agent had told you that he was free, you may not have gotten into the real estate business.
That's right. So thankfully that the agent that didn't do a very good job of working with me, thankfully they were there.
That's an amazing story. So how long did it take you after you got your real estate license before you decided you wanted to do this as a career?
It was relatively soon. I was doing both jobs. I was a theatrical stage manager. And so I was doing both jobs for a little while, but you have to understand that as a theatrical stage manager, my glass ceiling was probably at about $30,000 a year, which doesn't get you very far in Southern California. So I started looking at the potential for income, and I said, wow, I could do this. And I started doing both. I remember working my theater job at night. So I'd do that from 3 o'clock until midnight. And then my real estate job, I would work in the mornings. I would start at 7 and I would work until about 2 o'clock, and then I'd go to my other job. I didn't sleep during that time.
No. So you weren't getting a lot of sleep to start the real estate business. You put a lot of hours in to make this thing work.
but I started it, when I started it, I would say it took me about 6 months, because luckily I met a title rep who introduced me to Mike Ferry. And I would say that I wandered around for 6 months having no clue what I was doing. And everyone in my office was giving away pies and buying pumpkins for people. And I didn't have any money to do that kind of thing. So that wasn't going to work for me. And I didn't really know anybody here either. I had moved here 3 years prior, and all the people I knew were theater people who, for the most part, were poor and couldn't afford to buy a house. So I basically, in the mornings, I would go to work and I would do just sold calls, or I would ask other agents in the office if they had any buyers that they didn't want to work with, that they would refer to me. And so I did that in the mornings. And then I got my first deal was my brother, and I stumbled upon him, of course. And he was totally out of my area. He was, it took a while for him to find a place. And I got my first check and it was $2,000. And I said, that's it. I better do a lot more of this. Because I had my broker split, and then I had a split with a mentor. And I think I had not slept because I was so stressed I was going to do a good job for my brother. I didn't sleep for the 3 months that it took to sell him a house. But then I found Mike Ferry, and about 3 months into Mike Ferry, I had 6 transactions going, 2 listings, and stuff started finally moving for me.
Well, that's incredible.
That was great.
So tell me a little bit. You started out in a different office than where you're at now, because the office you're in now is a Mike Ferry office.
Right.
And so did you move from that office to Neil's office, or did you change to different companies, or how did that go for you?
So I started at a local banker office in 2003. That was the office that randomly happened to call me back. And then in 2007, I was pretty much their top producer. I was the one who was in the office the most of the time, and they rolled back commissions and stopped providing a lot of services at the same time for obvious reasons. But they had also been promising me my own office. I had a shared office, and because I was always in the office, and my office mate, I had 2 other office mates, and they kept coming in and just chit-chatting, and I was trying to prospect. So it was really challenging. And since they were taking more money of mine and giving me less services and not giving me the office that I was promised, I moved to a Keller Williams office, who gave me my own office and didn't make me go to sales meetings. They just kind of let me do my own thing. I was there from 2007 until about 5 years ago, I moved to Neil's office.
Okay, great. Tell me a little bit about what results did you get the first year in real estate?
My first year, I did 12 transactions.
Okay, great. And about how much money is 12 transactions back then?
About $90,000.
About $90,000 for 12 transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So quite a bit better than the $30,000 you're making in the other business.
Just a little bit.
So starting out, you
quit doing that as soon as I had my 6 transactions going. I quit the other job.
What change made you make the change from Keller Williams to Neil's office?
Neil opened an office in Long Beach. That was pretty much it. One of his recruiters called me and said, hey, Neil's going to be opening an office in Long Beach. Are you interested? And I've known him from Mike Ferry. I just never wanted to drive to Irvine, which, other than coronavirus traffic, that would normally be an hour commute. So that was his closest office previously.
Okay, good. So you knew Neil from the Mike Ferry because somebody had introduced you, and you knew Neil liked him, would like to work for him because you liked that system, but at the time was too far away for you to make that commute.
Right.
Okay, great. So what was the biggest challenge then, the first year or 2 that you had to overcome in the real estate business? Once you met Mike, what was the biggest challenge you say you had in the real estate business?
I would say the biggest challenge was learning what to say in a way that sounded intelligent. So Mike gives us all these scripts, and I would use the scripts but then I didn't really internalize and memorize those scripts to the point where I could just use them and that they would come out of my mouth without thinking. So like today, I'll be talking to somebody and I'll say things like interesting or, you know, which I never would have said in response to something before. So just, I'll even be at well, before coronavirus, I would go to a party and I would say, oh, where do you live? How long have you been there? All of those questions that are in the scripts. So all those things just come out of my mouth now without even thinking about it. And in the beginning, I think I was a lot more nervous. I was unsure. I didn't know my inventory. So I had to really learn my inventory and what that looked like. And I didn't know anybody. So I had to really get out there and meet people so that I could know people. Now the joke is I can't go anywhere without bumping into somebody I know.
So I want to go back to memorizing and internalizing scripts, because we have agents here that come from other companies, kind of like you did, going to Neil's office, and we introduce the scripts. And one of the things we hear consistently is it just doesn't sound like me. It's not natural, or that's not how I talk. Tell us a little bit, how did you make that connection in your mind to internalize so that the scripts became you, not you became the scripts? How did that happen for you?
I actually have a very clear picture of what that looked like. There was a class that I went to, and one of the other agents was teaching scripts. And I, like everybody else, sat there in the room kind of like this and said, I'm not going to do scripts because they sound stupid. And he said, hi, Melinda, how are you? And I said, I'm good. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. Good. What are you doing later today? Oh, I'm going to go have lunch. Oh, great. Do you want to have lunch with me? And he goes, what did I just do? I said, I guess that's kind of a script. He said, exactly. So he said, we use scripts every day. So you can choose good scripts or you can choose bad scripts. Which one do you want to use? And I was like a blinding flash of the obvious. I said, okay, I want to use good scripts. So, and I also was a theatrical stage manager. So to me, then it became obvious. You know, I worked in a lot of Shakespearean theater. And if you just read Shakespeare out loud and you don't like really understand the meaning of what they're saying, it sounds horrible. But if you really understand what it is you're trying to convey and you can speak it, it's a beautiful thing for any of us who's watched or appreciate Shakespearean theater. But if you don't understand what's going on or you don't know what you're saying, you're not going to convey it to your audience. So it's the same thing with the scripts, that you have to really internalize, understand, why is it that I'm asking this question? Why is it that this is being said this way in particular? And then the scripts are actually genius. There's so many embedded commands and so much nuanced language in there that the more we say them ourselves, the more they'll just come out of our mouths and they'll sound like us and you won't even know the difference.
Would you say then, Melinda, that you maybe had an advantage coming from a theater background when you made the connection to scripts? Because in theater, everybody's on a script, right?
100%. In movies, and I was behind the scenes, but I was responsible for making sure that everybody followed the scripts verbatim. That was pretty much one of my number one jobs.
So that's interesting. I think that you feel like that gave you some advantage then? I mean, you once you made the connection, you went, wait a minute, theater uses scripts, real estate should use scripts. And do you think that helped you decide, okay, I've got to get these things internalized?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. 100%. So what did you do to internalize? What was it and how long did it take you to internalize them? I mean, it sounds like once you made the connection, you said, okay, good, now I understand this, makes sense. I'm now going to internalize the scripts, because it's one of the biggest challenges that agents have, I think, at least we have here in our company a lot, is, the scripts don't sound like me, that's just not how I talk. But then once someone internalizes them and has them really down, they never move away from them. So what was your process to get where they became internalized for you?
I mean, I would say that it's still in process. at even the 17 years in. But what I really did a lot of focused, I did 1 hour of role play in the morning and 1 hour role play in the afternoons when I was newer. My role play in the morning was always prospecting scripts, and my role play in the afternoon was the listing presentation. So, and a lot of those listing presentations we actually recorded on VHS tape, and then we would go back and watch it. So I would drive to other agents' offices that I'd met at Mike Ferry events, and then we would record it, and then we would go back and watch it. I did some weird, funky things with my hands and my body, but those were really valuable experiences that I learned to understand better what I was doing and all the nervous habits that I had. And now we're doing the role playing. Even now we're doing role playing on Zoom. I'm doing listing presentations with other people where we're role playing it and practicing on Zoom. And it's even better because I can see real time what weird things I'm doing, or, you know, what I need to work on, and I can play it back and hear what's going on too. So all those things are great.
So you were, when the beginning, it was 2 hours a day pretty much for you.
Right.
1 hour was strictly presentation, so that when you got an appointment, you felt comfortable going out, and then 1 hour was the other scripts, whatever they would be, you know, the 471 expired, just listed, just sold, objection handling, that kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, that's great. And that again, your theater background, it seems like that would make sense to you. That you'd have a kind of a connection there that maybe a lot of people don't, because you go, wait a minute, this is what actors and actresses do.
Right. Yeah.
So that's interesting. You know, it's you have any advice for somebody that's struggling with, hey, these scripts really aren't me?
Yeah, again, I mean, it goes back to, I think we ultimately all use scripts. It's just a matter of what you use. If people are, here's the challenge, I would say, with the Mike Ferry scripts. You can't use the listing presentation script if you didn't follow all the other steps that he has. The listing presentation script does not work if you didn't pre-qualify the buyers. If they have zero motivation, it doesn't work. Which frankly, I don't want to go on those appointments anyway. So you have to have followed all of the other steps in order to get to that end point. And I think that's where sometimes it feels awkward for people, because they skip a lot of those in-between steps of the 5-step listing process. They didn't drop off a package beforehand, so the seller has no idea what they are looking at beforehand. You know, you didn't pre-qualify. If you didn't pre-qualify, how do you know what to say? Because you haven't asked them any questions about what you're going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. So, what skills and what systems are you currently working on right now to get to make your business move up another level?
Well, I think, as mentioned in my email back to you guys, that I had a baby last year, and so he's 10 months old right now. And so I really want to spend quality time with him in the evenings when I'm done working. So for me, it's all about seeing how I can do more in less time without adding a ton of staff. I actually had hired another staff member before everything started happening, and she just wasn't a good fit. So looking for a new one. But in the meantime, I just have myself, an assistant, and a buyer's agent, and that's it. And so I have to really compress my day into about 7.5 hours, and that's all I got. I don't have the capability of just continuing to work the rest of my day. So I'm looking for efficiencies right now and tweaking ways in which I can be more efficient and faster in what I have to get done in my day so that I can move things forward. So I'm doing a lot more delegating, fine-tuning my scripts, being stricter about who I go out and meet with, if I go out or if I spend the time with them on the phone. And if I feel like something's not getting where, I just try to cut it off faster.
So let me go back just a second. 7.5 hours a day, 7.5 hours a day. You're still working on your scripts. Then are you still recording yourself and critiquing yourself?
Yeah, I have a live role play once a day for a listing presentation right now because we're tweaking that a little bit. And then I'm doing prospecting role playing in the morning with Neil in the office.
So you're 17 years in the business and you're still working on your listing presentation. You're still recording yourself and critiquing yourself. How do you keep doing that when it's so boring?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's been changing a lot right now because of the questions and the objections that we're getting are slightly different with the coronavirus things. And we also had riots and stuff this weekend, so that's adding an extra fun curveball to everything else. So there's always something more to learn. And this is what I've learned from Neil. I mean, he's been doing this for 40 plus years. So, and he always has some little tweak, some little change to make it just a hair better. And I feel like at this stage in the game, it's all about those little tweaks. So if he finds one tiny little thing that he can give me, I could probably make an extra $20,000 or $30,000 a year just based off of that one little tweak that he gives me. So that's super valuable to me.
So somehow you've bought into the idea that really small, almost seemingly insignificant details are the difference between somebody taking a listing and not taking a listing, that it sounds like.
100%.
So let me ask a question. Because you have the baby, a 10-month-old baby, your goal this year is to do 80 deals. So tell me kind of what your stretch goal is to do 100. Tell me what your schedule looks like for a day. How do you do that with a 10-month-old baby, 7 hours a day?
Thankfully, I have a nanny, so that helps a lot. She gets here 7:30 and she's here 7:30 to 5. So in the morning, the first thing I do is I do some follow-up and stuff first thing in the morning. Try and delegate some stuff out to my staff before I really get going. At 8:30, we role play in my office, and then I start calling from 9 until 12, generally speaking. Then 12 o'clock, we have an office meeting kind of like this every day, and we have lots of guest visitors who come on, and we have a meeting, something right now. Sometimes I'm on those, sometimes I'm not, because I have sometimes appointments I have to go out to. Generally speaking, appointment slots scheduled for 2 and 4. And then if I don't have appointments, because I usually have 2 appointments a week. So if I don't have appointments, I can either prospect or I can do lead follow-up or have an hour of admin at 2 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry, not at 2 o'clock. Hour of admin's at 1 o'clock, and then my appointments are at 2 and 4.
So you do all of your appointments, listing appointments, buyers appointments, whatever they are, you do them all at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. How do you get people to meet with you at that time instead of at 7 and 8 o'clock at night?
I just ask. I actually think it's easier right now because so many people are home and people have more flexibility. And frankly, if they're only available at 7 o'clock, they're probably not going to be able to buy or sell a house very easily. So it's rare that people say I can only meet at 7 o'clock. It all just depends on the motivation of the person.
So you pretty much give them, I have 2 or I have 4, and if they can't fit into one of those 2 categories, you're probably not going to meet them.
Right. Like somebody who I talk to, I do sometimes do Saturday appointments. I only can do those between 12:30 and 2 because my son is sleeping during that time. So I will schedule some appointments on Saturday. So I made some calls this last Saturday, and this guy said, well, hey, I can meet at 5:30 and talk to you. And I said, I can't do that. I could do 5 though. So I'm versatile. I worked with him. So we moved at 5 and he was willing to work with me. As long as I'm done by 5:30, we're good.
Okay, great. So tell me, how's the coronavirus affected your market and your business specifically?
In our market in Long Beach, typically we have 300 sales per month. In March and April and May, we had only 155 to 160 sales per month. So our sales were basically cut in half. But our inventory also was lower. So because of that, we still have pretty much maintained just a 2-month supply of homes. So it's still very much a strong seller's market. One of my buyers wrote an offer on a property yesterday, and there were 28 offers in competition with them.
Gosh, 28
So
offers. That's a nightmare if you're a buyer's agent.
it is a nightmare for the buyer's agent. So, you know, and that one was priced very aggressively, but it did the trick. They ended up with very, very aggressive offers. So, you know, one of our listings recently, we had 6 or 7 offers on it, and it was priced right in line with the market. So it's just, there's a very, very limited supply of homes. So the good stuff does generally go quickly. Since I wrote a card out, where'd it go? Since coronavirus, I've had 7 listings sold, 5 listings taken, and 16 closings, and 12 of those closings were in April and May. So, March was rough. I didn't take any listings in the month of March, and that was very, very frustrating. But we did do a couple buyer sales, which thankfully kept us going, and we just rolled with it and adapted.
Okay, great. So let me ask you a question. Where does your business come from predominantly? How does that break down for you?
I would say 70% of it's coming from my past clients and center of influence. And then I have a variety of different online leads, and I haven't been doing a lot of expired calls because I've been mostly focusing on my past clients, and that's taking a lot longer for me right now. And with the tight inventory, frankly, there's some expireds that took their homes off the market because of coronavirus and just fear and things like that. I actually have it on my to-do list of things to call and get that reset up again. I just felt like I needed to take care of my past clients center of influence more. You know, I'll get an occasional for sale by owner here and there. But again, lower inventory means that they generally do sell themselves in many cases, or they're just somebody I don't want to work with. So
how do you what is it that you've done? Have you always been strong with your past customers, your center of influence? I mean, one of the hardest things we have to do is get an agent to work their center of influence the way we teach.
right.
For whatever reason, they don't want to talk to them or call them. We have people who've got fantastic centers of influences, but we can't get them to call them. The business they get from a center of influence would be if the center of influence actually calls the agent. How did you make that connection?
When I first started, I knew nobody. So that was a challenge. I had to build that. And I worked really hard. I was out at networking events. I was out in the public. I was meeting a lot of people. I ran a nonprofit. Like all of those connections that that I built over the years, I did really pretty well with, but I was only doing the, you know, mailing a card 4 times a year, and then I would probably only call them once or twice a year. So I was not that great at it previously. Up until 2005, you know, I did okay with that. 2006 came along, and then 2007, the market started tanking. Well, I'm an amiable, and I felt really bad for all my clients that just bought houses that now were worth half as much as they just bought them for. So during 2007, 2008, 2009, I did nothing except for call expireds. And I kicked myself because occasionally a past client would call me to help them out, either selling or short selling or whatever. But I felt so bad that I didn't call them. And then I lost a lot of business. I lost a lot of people because I didn't call them during that time. So probably back in 2012, 2013, there was a very short period of time I went through a divorce, and spent about 2 years just playing around, doing not very much, and just floating around at like 20, 25 deals a year. So after that time, I decided to get back to work. And when I did, I buckled down and really started getting serious with my past clients. I got more consistent with calling them four times a year. And then recently, since I moved to Neil's office, I started calling an A group once a month. Those are my people who give me referrals all the time. I'm constantly talking to them. My B group I call quarterly, and then I have a C group that I call once or twice a year.
So you actually follow the Mike Ferry system then?
Yep, absolutely.
That's what a great idea that is.
I finally started getting it probably 4 or 5 years ago.
So you're going to close 80 deals this year. How much income is that to you, Melinda? 80 deals?
About 950.
About 950,000. So you have a 10-month-old. What makes you want to make 950,000? I mean, why don't you just get comfortable at 400,000 or 500,000? And what's the thought process there?
Well, last year, 2018, I bought a house, a much bigger house. I was living in a triplex before, and in my triplex, my tenants were basically covering my mortgage. So I was only, for me, outlay was only about $1,500 a month, which in Southern California, that's super cheap for a rent for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. So I really stretched myself and went up to a $5,500 a month mortgage payment, and then I got 2 new cars. I also got married and got pregnant. All of those things in 2018. So 2018 was a pretty expensive year. And so I have to make $500,000 a year just to cover my expenses. So I want to build savings. I want to buy investment properties so that I can build for my son's future, and also for my retirement, because I'm in my 40s. So yeah, I don't have that far to go.
There's a whole bunch of people on here that don't want to hear that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Someone challenged me, Diane Mazzocco challenged me a couple of years back. She said, who says you have to retire in your 60s? Why can't you retire sooner? And so now I've been on a mission to retire by the time I'm 50. So I've only got 7 years to go. I better get cracking.
So that brings up my next question. Where do you want your business to be between the next 2 to 5 years?
I want to have my business in a place where it's super streamlined, super systematized, so that I could go on vacation and not have to think about work at all. That is one of my visions, that I have enough support here, that everybody's trained, cross-trained, that I can literally leave and not have to worry about it. And I also see myself maybe bringing on one other agent and one other staff member, and that's pretty much it, and doing about 150 to 200 deals a year.
Okay, so the next 2 to 5 years, 150 to 200 deals a year will be a really good income, but then a lot of systems in place so that you're not putting any more time in than you're currently putting in. Is that right?
Right. Neil will be very happy with that.
No, yeah, Neil will be very happy with that. Yes. So let me ask you a question. You've brought up Mike Ferry several times. How closely do you follow his system?
I'm a Mike Ferry junkie. Since I signed up 17 years ago, I've never left. I've gone to every superstar retreat and production retreat every year. The only exception was last year. I missed both because I was on my honeymoon and I was literally 2 weeks away from giving birth. And I told Mike he wouldn't want me giving birth in the front row, so I wouldn't be there. That was the only ones I've missed. And I've done every program he's ever offered. I'm in Think Big. I'm in Mondays with Mike. Yeah, I've gone with him to Italy. I've gone with him to Spain. we've had a lot of fun.
So you spend a lot of time, you get to spend a lot of time with Mike then too, then.
Yeah.
That probably helps your thinking process some.
Yes. Yes.
I bet it does. Let me ask you a question. What do you know now today that you wish you'd known when you began your real estate career?
I would say that, well, I definitely would have talked to my past clients' center of influence through that whole window of the down market because they needed my help too. So I wish that I would have been better about keeping people's names, staying in contact with even more people throughout. I think I would have had a much bigger business and a much more solid base had I continuously kept in contact with people over the years.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So you're talking to, say, an agent's in their first or second year in the real estate business now. They come to you and they say, Melinda, what advice would you give me the first or second year in the real estate business?
I would say, number one, get out and know your inventory. You know, even if you can't go into places right now, drive neighborhoods, drive by the houses. If you can go in them, really get to know the inventory. That just gives you so much confidence in knowing it, because you end up against a seller who's lived in a neighborhood for 20 years and knows everybody on the street. It's hard. You can get intimidated by that. So you need to know that inventory better than they do and what's out there. And then know those scripts. The more you know what to say, the more you don't have to think about it, and the more that the more powerful that you can be, the more that you study those scripts.
Okay, so would you suggest to someone that's been just getting in the business the first year or two that they do what you did, spend a couple hours a day working on those scripts?
Absolutely. If I was brand new in the business right now, or let's say I changed markets, the first thing that I would do every day would be role play. And then the second thing I would do is prospect. Then I would take my lunch, and then I would go out and preview homes in the afternoon to get to know the areas better.
Okay, great. So what advice would you give to someone that says been in the business for 4 or 5 years or did 25 deals, say, where you said you were floating around, and they want to go to 80 or 90 or 100? What advice would you give that agent?
So there was a number of years where I was stuck at 40 transactions and I couldn't figure out why. And I talked to a lot of people who were doing 50, 60 transactions, and everyone said to me, the biggest hurdle to getting over 50 transactions is your mindset. And now I have more appreciation for that now that I've finally done it. Because I think what tends to happen is you start to get on track for doing 50 or 40 or whatever that goal is, and then you get excited about it, and then you put it on cruise control, and you stop working as hard as you did before when you were ramping up to get to that level. And then you end up with that roller coaster effect where you put the brakes on and then you go, oh no, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Okay, here, I'm gonna put the brake, I'm gonna go full speed again. And then you get tired, you get overwhelmed because your business grows, and then you put the brakes on or you coast again. So eliminating that as much as possible and keeping your mindset strong and not letting the fact that you're either on track or ahead of your goals get to your head.
So the mindset part, what do you do? What do you do for mindset? What is it that gets you to say, yeah, I want to get to 80 or 100 or 150 or 200? I mean, those are big goals. It definitely puts you in the above 1% category of real estate agent. What is it that you do for your mindset to help you to not stall or do that roller coaster ride you're talking about?
I have little reminders kind of all around me. So I'm in the Think Big group, and we have a mastermind group, and we text each other. I have a accountability partner group where we send each other, we have a countdown between retreats as to how many listings we're going to take. So each day we count down and we send some positive affirmations. So I keep those in track. I keep things like, I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but I keep things like this in front of me saying I want to make $100,000 a month in 2020. So just constantly reminding myself and keeping those things in front of me. I talk to Neil frequently and often, you know, especially with all the stuff going on, sometimes I can really get in my head. And when I catch myself doing that, I will reach out to Neil or Mike or Sabrina, or, you know, one of my mastermind group partners and just say, hey, this is what's going on. You know, I talked on Sunday, I was having a rough time, and I called one of my mastermind partners in Chicago, and we talked for, you know, 20 minutes and just kind of bumped each other up a little bit, and ready to fight again on Monday.
So the people you spend your time with.
Yeah.
Very good. Melinda, if it's okay, we have a few minutes left. If you've got a minute, I'd like to open the up to other people on this call to ask questions, if it's okay. Jill, I see your hand up. If you take yourself off mute, Jill, go ahead.
Melinda, thank you for doing this for us. I'm a huge COI myself person, and my question to you is, as you're calling all your COI, what script do you use mainly? And then how do you control, as I go through them, like right now, currently I run into a lot of buyers and I really want to be a listing agent. How do you handle getting the listings out of your COI? What is your focus?
You know, I was doing something similar. I really looked carefully at what I was asking for. So I found that I was saying, do you know anyone who wants to buy a home? And then that was going to be their primary focus. So I think just look carefully at what you're saying to them. But buyers make me a lot of money too. So I'm okay with that. There's two sides to every transaction. There has to be a buyer and a seller. I know Mike is definitely listing, and that's my focus. But I still work with sellers and buyers. I'm working with a buyer right now who's never seen the property that they're buying, and we're closing in 2 weeks, and it's $1,275,000. So I'm okay with that. I didn't have to show her any properties.
You stick with the script then? Do you say, who do you know wants to buy, sell, invest in real estate?
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are using some of the scripts like Neil came up with, but Neil gave us some additional scripts with coronavirus. And I know Mike has talked a lot about having more empathy with people right now, and just having more of a conversation. Hey, just want to check in, see what kind of resource I can be for you right now. So, do you need any resources? Do you know anybody who has Airbnb properties that maybe needs to sell them right now? So I'm asking more specific questions about it. Who do you know who has rental property that maybe is struggling with a tenant not paying the rent? All of those specific scenarios trigger things more than just asking general. So I try to delve a little bit deeper into whatever's going on with that particular person. The very first thing I did when all the rules came out in California, I don't know how familiar you guys are, but they basically said that tenants don't have to repay until August of 2021 their rents if they're affected by coronavirus, which could just be you're laid off or a reduction in pay or whatever. They don't have to pay until August, which is obviously causing a lot of stress on landlords. So I called all of my clients who have rental properties first and foremost and checked on them, made sure their tenants were paying the rents. If they had any problems, questions, whatever, see what I could answer for them.
Great. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Darren, go ahead, please.
I was interested on when you said you classify your COI into A, B, and C. Can you explain that a little deeper, I guess?
So A is anyone who's given me a referral in the last 6 months, and somebody who is an influencer. So an accountant, an attorney, people who have a big database, you know, just an expressive who knows every single person in the neighborhood, knows everything that's going on. Those kind of people who are going to feed you a lot of referrals. Those are the ones who are in my A group. B group is pretty much everyone else. And C group is people who maybe moved out of state, or maybe I really didn't like working with them anyway because they were kind of a pain in the butt. Those kind of people, they're in the C group. people who you kind of look twice and go, should I call that person? I don't know. I want to talk to them today. You know, those kind of people.
Great, great. Joe, go ahead.
So going back to your first year, you said you didn't really know too many people. As a new agent, with little or no testimonials, how did you build value or credibility in the eyes of your clients that you were trying to pursue?
Thinking back. I mean, I used my office statistics some, but I think that people just saw that I was hungry and that I was willing to go the extra mile for people. My very first listing presentation, I got from a Just Sold call. And I went in there, I was so nervous. But I went in there and I sat down with them and went through everything. I followed the script verbatim and everything. And at the end I said, let's sign the contract. They said, okay. And I was shocked. And they said that they wanted to, I mean, it was crazy because they wanted to sell it with all the furniture in it, you know, one of those people. You know, they had certain stipulations. I was like, yeah, let's do it. We can figure out a way to make that happen. And then I sat down and went through the contract with them line by line. So, and they were like, thank you. That was so great. I mean, when they bought that house, the agent had just stuck the contract in front of them and just said, sign it. And they did, blindly not knowing what anything was. So they appreciated that I took the time to go through it. Now, I probably wouldn't do that today. I'd probably be that agent, just stick it in front of them and say, just sign it. I could explain it to them, but most of the time I just hit the key points and that's it. But for them, it was because I took the extra time to go through that with them and that I was proactive about reaching out and finding someone who was looking to sell, because I had some buyers who were looking to buy a property like theirs. So they just liked that I was being aggressive and getting out there, and they didn't really ask much about my credibility. I had some references in my packet, I'm sure, from just personal references, but I don't remember them even asking anything more about, you know, my track record or anything like that. They just went based on my knowledge and my presentation.
Thank you.
Good, good. Okay, other questions? One or two other questions? Okay, back to Jill.
Real quick, I don't want to hog the screen here, but on your memorizing the scripts, Melinda, I agree with you. It's scary. John, you know, really encouraged us to do Mike Ferry scripts, and I'll catch myself doing it to my kids. Well, how do you feel about this? You know, where did you come from? This, that, and the other. How did you start learning those scripts? Did you do what Mike recommends? Read the lines 5 times fast, slow? I mean, you're in theater. How would you recommend memorizing, for example, the for sale by owner? I don't do it much. I would like to put it under my belt because I'm mostly COI. How would you recommend getting that down?
You know, I had every trick in the book. So I had them, there used to be at Matthew Fair, used to have a CD that would play the scripts with Baroque music in the background. And then I recorded them my own voice and listened with Baroque music in the background. I literally played them under my pillow at night. Sometimes I'm sure I drove my spouse crazy. That's probably why I got a divorce. But I was listening to them in my car all the time. I was just constantly bombarding my brain with it. So even if I wasn't listening to it actively or saying it with it at that time, I was listening. It was getting pounded into my brain that way. I love his recent thing is, you know, write out the script for 30 days in a row. I think that's great. I'm a huge hand to eye learner. So if I write something down, it helps imprint it in my brain. So that's a huge thing. If you take a script that you want to learn and you write it down every day for 30 days, you will know that script at the end of 30 days. You won't need to look at the script to reference it anymore. And everybody has different ways of learning. Some people need to say it out loud. Some people need to read it over and over. And that's why you utilize all of these different techniques. But yeah, you can record it on your phone, play it back to yourself. You can listen to some of the role plays that are on the different Mike Ferry sites and play them. And all of that stuff just constantly pounding in your head. I used to play it in the background while I was prospecting, so it was just on loop. So yeah, all of those ways, they're all great ways to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Cody, go ahead.
Yeah. So, hi, Melinda. Cody Ellison. You said something that I think a lot of us struggle when we first get into this, especially when attending Mike Ferry retreats, because Mike talks about environment, right? You are a product of what you surround yourself with. So, I mean, I struggled with this for the first couple of years attending events, but you're in a big think group with Mike, obviously, which is great. Mondays with Mike. For maybe a new agent that doesn't have production to say, a lot of times back, right? You know, the associating with people that are doing 100, 150 deals. What did you do to get into groups like that, as far as mastermind groups or big thinking groups, to be able to expand your thinking?
I know that's a challenge. It seems like it's a challenge. And sometimes it's just, you have to go up and introduce yourself to people. I find that the more business that people do, generally speaking, the more welcoming they are in sharing their experiences. And I mean, that's been great going on the Think Big trips. Some of the people I didn't know before, and we're hanging out in Spain together, and we're all chatting about just whatever. I mean, not just work, it tends to be a lot of work, but you know, we're learning about each other in other ways. Went to the Plaza in New York, and we're all doing different adventures together. We were doing different things that were outside of our normal box. But I think a lot of it's just call people up and say, hey, can I pick your brain for a few minutes? And can I talk to you? I mean, John reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to come on this call? And I said, sure, I can do that. No problem. So most people are happy to take a little time to do that. As far as the mastermind groups, one of my mastermind groups I've been in for almost, I want to say 12 years now. The main core group we started 12 years ago, there were 10 of us, and it whittled down to 4. We added a few more people in the last couple of years. And the group of us have kind of grown together. So we all kind of started out, I think, together back then doing 25, 30 deals. And the people who weren't true to the system, who weren't, because we had we had minimum standards. You had to be in Mike Ferry coaching. You had to be doing a certain amount of business each year, things like that. You had to go to the retreats. You had to go to the events. So we added a few more people in the last couple of years, and not all of them were on the same level of production. But I mean, one of the gals in my countdown group, that group kind of came as a splinter group of a different group. But in that group, I mean, we were supposed to do 30 transactions or 30 listings between the January retreat and July, and she's already down to 5. I'm so far behind her, but she's pushing me to grow faster. I also play a signature game with George Graham, who's up in Seattle. He and I, we text each other every time we get a signature. So if we get a signature on a buyer broker contract, a listing sold, or a buyer sale, we get a point. And every month we race each other to see who can get the most points. And we've been doing this for 4 months now. He kicked my ass last month, but I'm not going to let that happen this month. So, we just try to do fun things, but literally a lot of times it's just reaching out, say, hey, let's do this together. In Georgia, in my case, our coach, Vicky, hooked us up and said, you guys need to compete against each other because you guys would work well together. And we had a lot of fun doing that. So
well, thank you. That was good.
Great. Melinda, thank you so much. I already know you know this, but you are with Neil Schwartz, one of the very best brokers in the whole country. I mean, the guy is incredible. He genuinely cares whether you guys do well. He really does. I mean, it's his thing, So just in the short time that we've had the opportunity to visit with you, though, I can see why Neil gave me your name, because I called Neil. I said, Neil, who in your office should I be talking to? And he just immediately said, Melinda. And without a doubt, you are one of the most coachable agents I have ever met. You are just, when I tell you to do it, you do it. And it's just so refreshing. You've been great for our group. I hope they've picked up on a lot of the things I've picked up on. We want to say thank you so much for taking an hour of your day. We know you're very busy. We don't want to take any more of your time. We want you to be able to get back to your baby and your business and make things happen. So everybody, let's all say, take your off of mute and say thank you to Melinda.
Thanks, Melinda.
Thank you, Melinda. Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
Good job.
Melinda. Appreciate it.
The best thanks you could give is to send me a referral to the Long Beach or surrounding areas.
And that's
All right.
why
I
we
was
are,
gonna say-
Melinda.
Ahead, everybody else.
Thank you.
Melinda,
do that.
send me your contact. I have a brother down.
Andrea has all the stuff. So
And
we'll
we
get-
aren't to give her the contact that Neil give you, John, because that's her private cell phone.
Okay, we'll get
And
the other
so-
one. All right, good.
There
We'll
you
get the
go.
other one. Here it is, right here from Melinda. So
There
I
it
send
is.
her.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks,
All right,
Melinda.
thanks again, Melinda. Thanks everybody. Great job. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.